This is the book that you should get, all right? This is the book. It's by my man, Devon Franklin. He's an author, a writer, a movie producer. How many of you saw his most recent movie, Breakthrough? Breakthrough, yeah. He's a motivational speaker. He's a pastor. He's a preacher. He's a family man. And I'm proud to say he's a son. He's a brother. He's a husband. He's everything. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love him. Thank you for being here today. And please welcome to the KJLH Men's Empowerment Summit for 2019, the one and only Devon Franklin. Devon Franklin.
Wow. First of all, give it up for KJLH, Andre Russell, Stevie Wonder. Wait a minute. All this has been free 99. Give it up for KJLH, Andre Russell, Stevie Wonder, the incredible staff, all the DJs, program director, all of it. It is truly a blessing. How many of you all have had a great day today? How many feel more empowered now than when you started the day? How many are excited to be alive right now? Yeah, right on. It is a blessing. I'm so glad that we can come together. It is so important to have empowerment. And so much of empowerment, I believe, begins with communication. Too often we're talking at one another. We're not talking with one another. So, I have about half an hour, and I want to give you kind of a talk, and then I want us to be able to ask some questions so that we can have a conversation. One of the things that I don't have to tell you about what's going on in the news, but, there's been so much conversation about us as men. And this is one of the reasons why KJLH said, well, wait a minute, we're doing something for the women. We got to do something for the men. And so this is the third year where there's been the Empowerment Summit for Men. So why don't you go ahead and give it up for the third year? Now, here's what's interesting. Earlier this year, as Andre mentioned, I released a book called The Truth About Men, What Men and Women Need to Know. And we're going to be raffling off 20 free copies, signed copies for all of you in attendance today. I think they're giving you tickets. But here's what motivated me to want to write this book. Because people, when I told them I wanted to write a book about what we as men can do better, people said, don't do it. It's dangerous to talk about what men need to do better. And I said, I know, because I'm a man and I don't like to do my work either. I understand. I said, but I believe it's time for us as men to have a real conversation about where we can go, how we can get there, and the challenges we face along the way. There's so much in the media about what we're not doing right. But most don't realize the struggle internally that most of us as men face. Now, I know there are some ladies in the house. Give it up for the ladies in the house. Give it up for the ladies in the house, all right? So if you are a woman in here, I need you to know you are going to be privy to what I call a man talk, all right? All right, so y'all listen. I'm going to act like you ain't even here because I'm going to talk to my brothers, all right? We're going to have a real conversation. Y'all going to be able to eavesdrop into a real conversation. But here's why I wanted to write this book. When people said, don't do it, it's a crazy thing to do, you should not write a book about what men have to do better. I wanted to write this book because as a young man growing up, I was raised in the church. Who here has been raised in the church? Right now, see, I love being raised in the church, but there was something that would happen. The church would tell me what to do, but wouldn't always teach me how to do it. Right? So as a young kid growing up, having this idea of what manhood was supposed to be, the first area where that was shattered for me is that my father was an alcoholic. I grew up in the Bay Area. Most of the memories I have of my father was when he was drunk, not sober. And here's the thing, at 9 years old, he died of a massive heart attack at the age of 36. Leaving me and my brothers, I have an older brother and a younger brother, leaving my mother to raise the three of us by herself, along with the help of my grandmother and my grandmother's 7 sisters. And so as a young man, not having a man in the house, I didn't have an idea of what it really meant to be a man. Right? So I was like, okay, how do I navigate this journey? And so I really gave myself to the church and was raised in the church and there every single weekend and learned a lot about discipline and faith and sacrifice, and all of those things were well, but there was something nagging at me. How do I walk these things out and deal with the flesh of the man, even though I'm learning about the spirit of the man? Because here is the thesis of this book, that all of us as men, we're in a struggle between two things, the spirit and the flesh. I call that love and lust. Now, love is selfless. Lust is selfish. And I'll unpack lust as we move through this talk, but lust is more than just a desire for sex or women. It's a selfish impulse for anything that is detrimental, and we make the decision to go after it no matter what. So it could be spiritually detrimental, financially detrimental, personally detrimental, professionally detrimental. Anything we lust after that does not actually edify us, I argue, is something that is taking us away from who we're supposed to be, not to it. And this is the struggle that we as men face. But most of the time, our weakness for lust shows up in how we deal with sex and women. So when I was in my teenage years, I found a revelation about my father that rocked my world, that put me on this journey as a man to figure out how to win the battle over lust. I told you we're having a true talk. Am I saying too much? All right, am I talking real? We're going to keep it all the way real, y'all. So in my teenage years, I was over a family member's house, and I was looking through some old pictures, and I found an old picture of my father sitting on the bed with two women. One was my mother, and another was a woman in our family. What was interesting about the picture is my father and the woman in the family looked happy. My mother looked distraught. And it was so startling to me. I said, what's going on here? It literally jumped out at me. Now, I'm assuming that so many other people in the family had looked through these books and seen these pictures. No one maybe had ever asked a question. But for me, I said, wait a minute. This picture is telling a story. What is the story? And so I began to ask the question, what's going on here? Nobody wanted to tell me. Nobody wanted to tell me the truth. I'm going to pause here, and I'll come right back to our message. This is one of the reasons why we as a culture and community fail, because we don't tell each other the truth. The reality is that it is hard. Nobody knows how to do this thing perfectly. We all struggle, but too often we're quick to judge instead of quick to teach. We're quick to chastise instead of quick to communicate. And as a result, there's a lot of truth that we discover as we get older, but we don't always share that truth. And as a result, somebody close to us could be suffering with the very thing we've overcome, but we are not taking the time to tell them the truth. I love you so much, I've got to tell you where your actions are going to lead you. Now, you may cut me off today, but that's okay. I would rather somebody cut me off because I've told them the truth than to keep a relationship that cannot handle the truthfulness that is required to walk through this life. I don't know who I'm talking to right now, but don't be afraid to share the truth. Because as the word says, the truth will set us free. So I asked for the truth. What's going on? Finally, someone told me the truth. That my mother found out that my father had an affair with the woman in our family that was in the picture. And that's what the story, the picture was telling. And it rocked my world. I mean, I said, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that my father cheated on my mother? I said, so if my father couldn't be faithful, what does that mean as I grow older? Will I ever be able to be faithful? Because, see, we're raised in a culture that tells us as men, real men sleep with as many women as you can. Real men get as much money as you can. Real men get houses. Real men get cars. Real men get position. And here's what happened. I call this the box. If we as men don't fit that box, we are met with violence growing up. Stop crying. Man up. Stop being a wimp. You only got one woman? You don't play any sports? So what do we as men do? We learn to fit in the box by any means necessary. And as a result, we don't talk. Because we're trying to fit something that we know isn't quite right. So as a man growing up, discovering that my father cheated on my mother, and now trying to figure out what does it mean to be a real man, this is what sent me on this journey that I'm still on, and why I have been so determined to share this truth, because as men, we are struggling in silence, and it's time to find some relief, because there is a solution. And here is what I have discovered. As I grew older, I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna wait until marriage. Again, y'all, we're having a real conversation. So I don't know how far or wide this conversation is going, but I'm just talking to y'all. So we're going to keep it real. All right? So I said, as a teenager, I'm going to wait until marriage to have sex. That's what I said. Because that's what was taught in the church. But the church sometimes teaches you how to be holy, but what happens when you get horny? How do you handle that? Sometimes it doesn't go away when you just say, in the name of Jesus, I cast the demon. And sometimes it's right there. Come on, y'all, let's be honest. Come on. I'm sharing my truth with you because I love you so much, right? You can be holy but still have these feelings and you don't know what to do with them. And so often this is where we miss it because we don't have the information on how to deal with an urge. I believe that our life becomes the sum total of the urges we manage. If we learn to manage our urges, we will learn to manage our life. But nobody teaches us how to do that. Most of the time, people teach us, if you have an urge, act on it. Deal with the consequences later. Really? But here was my story. Again, I'm sharing my truth. So here's the thing. I said I was going to wait until marriage because that's what I was being taught. But senior year of high school, I got in a relationship, and all that waiting went out the window. Okay, I know. Okay. Y'all just leave me out here by myself, right? Okay. All right. Okay. I see your face. Y'all know I'm telling the truth. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. It all went out the window. And I was like, you know what? Listen, it's going to be fine, whatever. For years, I was not waiting. Here's what happened when I was in this battle. One of the reasons why I think that I failed is because this lust in me was so strong, I didn't know how to deal with it. Now, some of you may be in this moment right now. Don't worry, I'm going to give you some tips and tools on how to deal with it. Because what happens is every man has love and lust in us. Love is the love of ourselves, the love of God, the love of women in our life, the love of family, the love of community, the love of our purpose. But this lust wants what it wants whenever it wants it, however it wants it. And when this lust, and in the book I use this analogy. Now, we as men are not dogs at all, but what I use this analogy to help articulate what it feels like. So I call love the master. I call lust the dog. For us as men to be the men we were called to be, we have to master the dog within. You all know that famous prophet by the name of George Clinton who said, why must I be like that? Come on, why must I chase the cat? Nothing but come on, y'all, right? Hey, that's a prophetic word, am I right? You know, because he knew something like, there's something in me that does something I don't want it to do. How do I get control? I don't know. Maybe that's just the way I'm supposed to be. But as men, so often when we allow that lust within to rule our life, it ultimately ruins our life. Why? Because when we satisfy ourselves at the needs and at the expense of everyone else, we do so much untold damage to people we profess to care about. Why? Because you can have somebody, I got to give you a commercial break. I'm going to come right back to our regular scheduled program. Listen, if y'all don't want to be convicted right now, you might want to leave because what I'm going to say might convict you. Here's what happens. Here's what happens. As a man, watch this, as a man. So often, my wife and I, Megan, give it up for my wife, Megan Good, give it up. Amen. She's in New York right now. And so here's the thing. We wrote a book called The Wait because even though I wasn't waiting, ultimately, after 5 years of not waiting, I ultimately asked God, if you just give me the strength and the power to get out of this relationship, I will wait until marriage. So I got out of that relationship, about 23, 24. Now, I didn't know I wasn't getting married until 33. So I waited again. Hallelujah, somebody. So I don't want y'all to talk to me. If you're talking about a day, I can't go a day. Listen. Yes, you can if you put your mind to it. All right? So here's the thing. We wrote this book called The Wait because we really wanted to show people that there's another way. Millions of women all around the world, some men too, have read this book and have come to us and said, we're doing the wait, but here's the problem. We can't find any men who will do the wait with us. Here's my point. If you are a man and you're dealing with a woman who says she does not want to sleep with you, because she wants to preserve her heart, her health, and her wholeness, that's a sign of a great woman, not a woman to discard. You can clap on that. But why have we as men been tempted to discard women who will not please our flesh? Because we're allowing that lust to run our decision making. But when we say we're going to let the master take over, we're going to lead with love, we then have to say, wow, if she doesn't want to honor my flesh, that actually means she stands for something. That actually means she's going somewhere. Maybe I need to take a book out of her page. Why am I so quick to seek pleasure without accountability and just give myself away to so many people? Think about it, man. How many women have you given yourselves to? How many back rooms? How many back seats? And let me ask you right now, what do you have to show for it? How much money and time and dates have you as a man spent chasing it? And currently, you can't reconcile how much time you spent chasing it relative to the time you need to do what God has called you to do. This is why I wrote this book, because as men, it's time for us to say, yes, we struggle, but we can ultimately succeed. So as I came out of this period of waiting, I said, oh, got it. Here's what's going on. This lust in me, this dog in me, if I don't control it, it will control me. Now, here's what I learned. Even though, while I was waiting during that period of time, that didn't make me a great dater. Let me tell you, there were times I was a terrible dater. There were times I would date somebody on Tuesday, I'd date another somebody on Thursday, and I'd have one on Saturday night, and none of them would know anything about anybody, right? Man, listen, some of y'all, you're with your Saturday date right now, and they don't even know it. They don't even know it. I'm sorry. I'm not really sorry. I'm here I want to help change and convict your life. And so here's what happened. Here's what happened. Again, I'm in the process of learning about what it means to be a man. Learning about, because see, so often as men, we're taught manhood through the lens of doing. If you have spent any time with any man here during this empowerment summit, I would argue that the majority of men that you had conversations with, somewhere along the conversation came up, what do you do? What do you do? Where do you work? How do you make a living? Because as men, we value each other and ourselves by what we do. Here is the problem. Because when we aren't doing the things we want to do, we don't feel as good about ourselves as we should. Real manhood is found in being. Who are you? Who did God create you to be? When we focus on being more so than doing, we can find the peace that may be evading us. So I had, as a young man, had to learn, okay, it's not about what I do, it's about who I am. And sometimes my actions betray who I am. So I wasn't the best dater. Like I said, sometimes I'm dating more than one at a time. But here was the issue. I'm not saying that you can't date, and I'm not saying that you can't be free to explore the right fit. But sometimes as men, we become master manipulators, because we don't allow the person that we're dating to know the truth about our intentions. Be honest. Be honest. I got this vision from God that blew me away, and it motivated me to be honest. I'll tell you what it was. I was at my wedding. This is in the vision. And I was at the aisle, at the altar, about to say I do. And the minister said, turn around. And down the center aisle were all the women I had dated. All of them. Lord have mercy. Some of y'all would have a heart attack if only one of the women you dated walked up in here right now. But all of them were in this vision. But here is the key. They all were cut open. They were slain, bleeding, all of them down the aisle. And God said to me, do you think it was worth all their hearts to get here? He said, these are my daughters. If you're not serious, don't play with them. I got to talk to a man right now. Yes, you can clap on it. Because too often as men, I talk about this in the book, as men we have a natural desire to be adventurous. And back, in the day, the world was more situated for us to find satisfaction through adventure. Whereas now, we can pull out our phone and get anything within a minute, right? Doesn't matter. You can get a car in a minute. You can get food in a minute. So the adventurous nature is still here, but we don't always seek out healthy ways to explore that adventure. And most men, we find ourselves finding adventure with women. But here's the challenge. Women are not objects. They're real people. So when we don't have any regard for their feelings, we treat them as objects. We inflict, for us, it could just be a moment of pleasure, but for them, it can inflict a lifetime of pain. This is why as men, we have to determine what kind of man do we want to be? A man that inflicts pain or a man that heals pain? I believe there's only two kinds. When we begin to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be honest about my intentions. So at that time, after I came out of this vision, I had some house cleaning to do. I literally had to have some hard conversations. Why? Because the women that I was dating, I was only dating them for my pleasure, not for purpose. So I had to go to them and say, hey, I love y'all. You're great, but you're just not for me. Well, what's wrong? Did I do something wrong? No, you didn't do anything wrong. But I can't look at you knowing that I don't have an intention for you. And I'd rather have you cry now than to keep stringing you along knowing that you're going to cry later. Real manhood is not fearing hard conversations. Real manhood is saying, you know what? I don't want to be the manipulator that my father was. I don't, because here's what happens. Any married men in the house? Any married men in the house? Okay, right. Give it up for the married men. Give it up for the married men. Come on. Now, any man that is married will know what I'm getting ready to say is true. I thought that when I said I do, all the feelings, the dog, so to speak, was going to go to sleep. The lust was gone. I thought it was gone. I said I do. Maybe that first month, it was all good. Then all of a sudden, that dog woke up. Right? And here's what I learned. Whatever challenges and lack of discipline I had before marriage, it carried into marriage. Am I right? Marriage is not a magic wand. All right? Here's something else. I got to give y'all some truth. Now, I will give a little tidbit to the ladies that are here. I want you to be very clear about something. This struggle between in a man is not a reflection of how much he loves you. As men, we can love you and still have this struggle. Because so often women say, well, wait, why do you have this feeling or this thought? I don't know. I'm trying to deal with it. But here's what I know. If the man in a woman's life is honest with them, and that woman makes that man feel smaller because of that honesty, it may be the last time that man chooses to be honest. Because it's so hard for us to be vulnerable. Real manhood is built on that vulnerability and being honest with the struggle. So after I had this conversation and basically cleared house, so to speak, it was soon thereafter where I met my wife. Now, I didn't want to get married. I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to get married. At the time I was fairly senior executive at Sony Pictures, making great money, traveling the world, and I didn't want to get married. But here was the challenge. When I met her after the third date, I knew she was going to be my wife. But here was the issue. Even though most of you know her and she's famous, I didn't want somebody that was in the public eye. I was like, that's not what I want, Lord. That's not on my list. Did you not get my list? Right? But here was the challenge. Are you going to marry a list or an image, or are you going to marry the person? And too often, we keep trying to make a person into an image and not accept them for who they are. So it was time, even though I didn't know it was time. It was so hard for me because I had not had a commitment. This marriage, the marriage that I've been in, only marriage I've had for 7 years, is the longest commitment I've ever had in life. I didn't know how to do this, but I knew that it was time to work on it. Real men, as men, we are defined by our commitments, the things we face, where we exhibit courage. We could be scared, but we do it anyway. We're not defined by the things we run from. As men, too often we find our value in running instead of staying and seeing it through. Have there been times when I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm doing? All the time. There's no manual on how to be a husband. I'd work on it, but I don't know if I succeed every day. But guess what? I may have failed yesterday, but I'm getting up and I'm trying again today. Why? Because I never want to inflict the same pain that my father did on my mother. That hurt never goes away. So for me, and why I'm on this mission, and why I wanted to come and talk today, is to say, we can become the men we were called to be. We can become bigger and better than our urges. We can get love into the position and priority of our life. But how do we do it? I'm going to give you some quick practical tips, real practical tips. The first one is take a 10 count. A lot of times when we're used to feeling something, we're used to acting on it. When we take a 10 count, we create space between the feeling and the action. When we create space, it gives us a chance to think about what we're thinking about doing before we just do it. So when you're in a situation and you're tempted to do something that works against who you are, works against your commitment, do me a favor, take a 10 count. Here's another thing. Play out the consequences. All right. So you may be in a relationship or you may be married, and let's say you're thinking about cheating on your wife or your girlfriend. Okay, I want you to right now play it out. Who are you planning on doing it with? Where you plan on doing it? I want you to play out the consequence. Like you not only do you think about who you're going to do it with, where you plan on doing it, put yourself in the moment after you've done it. Now turn to your right, and there's your wife or your girlfriend watching the whole thing. Can you live with the consequences? If you can't, come back and don't do it. Right? Here's the other thing that's so important. I have found this next tip is one of the greatest ways to get victory over this struggle. Talk. Anything we suppress, we empower. Anything we're in denial about, we actually empower it to destroy us. Too often, as I mentioned earlier, as men, we suppress what we feel. We hold it in. We don't talk. We don't communicate. And those things that we keep pushing down are going to come out in unhealthy ways. As men, you have to have a safe space. Now, that safe space could be one other friend, guy friend. Okay, can I say this for a minute? If you are a man in a relationship or marriage, an unsafe space is a woman that is not your family member, right? And I would even argue sometimes even best friends, you got to be careful, right? Because if you're telling a woman who is not a family member outside your marriage things about your marriage, you're going to find yourself being drawn to her instead of your wife or your girlfriend. Can I say that? Oh, man, I'm talking to somebody right now. All right? I felt that. They were like, oh, Devon, why are you saying? Get him off the mic. Cut the mic. He's saying too much. He's convicted too much, right? But here's the thing. A safe space is a place where you can talk openly. Here's what I'm going through. I don't know how to deal with this. Y'all, listen. I was at work. Let me tell you what happened. Man, listen. Having somebody, at least one person, that you can talk with is the right place to be. And ideally, if you are married, it should be in your marriage. And if you're not married, it can be with somebody else that you truly trust. Very important, communication. Where we communicate, because transparency leads to transformation. And so often as men, we're holding stuff in. We're not talking about it. But it's eating at us. And it's eating our spirit away. Start talking. Start communicating. And guess what? As men, it's okay to say these words. I don't know. I don't know. As a man, real manhood is not found in the answers. It's found in having the courage to ask the questions. And to admit, I don't know. Listen, y'all, I don't know how to do this. I want to become better, but I don't know. Why do I feel this way? I don't know, but I'm working on a solution. Why am I here? I don't know. It's okay to admit there are certain things you just don't know. Because too often as men, we bear the burden of feeling like we got to have all the answers. We got to know it all, and that's just not true. Real manhood, I believe, is it can come alive when we communicate, when we talk. I got plenty of people that are in my safe space, so to speak, where I can call them, I can text them, I can reach out and say, yo, my brother, I need some help right now. I need some help. Man, listen, we got to talk this thing through. Because if I don't talk, this dog in me is about to rise up, right? Because I don't stand before you as somebody who has mastered the dog within. I work on mastering it every day. So I'm not talking to you from a place of, oh, I've done it. Let me tell you how I did it. Here's how I'm doing it. There's a difference. Because, see, too often I believe that when as people in the public eye sometimes, we present to you all an image that we got it all together, that we got all the answers. All you got to do is ask us. Listen, I don't have all the answers. I'm working on this thing every day. And it's some of the best work I do. Learning to stay committed, learning to be faithful, learning not to live with just a desire for money or power, learning to be of service, learning to live a life of sacrifice. These are the things that real manhood is built on. And these are the things that are incredibly hard to do. But when we do it, we will find the true thing, which is peace. I don't believe it's as much about the money we have, about the job. All those things are fine. The accolades, all those things are fine. But the thing that I seek most, and where I believe real manhood is found, is peace. Do you love who looks back at you in the mirror? Do you really, really love who looks back at you in the mirror? Because what I've found is, as a man, when I don't love me, it's hard for me to love you. But this is the area where most men struggle because we were not told how to love. We were not taught how to love. So when we get in relationships, when we get into marriage, it becomes one of the hardest things we do. Why? Because there's no manual to teach me how to love. But real love starts with service, communication, and sacrifice. I'm going to share a quick little anecdote with you, and then I'll take some questions. So again, I'm just telling y'all my truth here, right? So when Megan and I first got married, I think there was a section left out of our vows, but I think it's in the book of Genesis somewhere where it says that men are supposed to take out the trash and women are supposed to cook. I think that's somewhere in. I think so. I think it's there. Somebody come on, but back me up. It's there somewhere. So again, we're talking about manhood. We're talking about mastery. We're talking about leading in love, okay? One of the areas that if you can get this, I guarantee you your life, your relationship, your marriage will go to another level. It's about managing expectations. So watch this. So when we got married, Megan started cooking. And I said, oh, she's cooking. I'm going to take out the trash. Great. It's wonderful. Now, her recipe repertoire, it wasn't very deep, wasn't very wide, okay? She had a good baked chicken recipe, all right? Baked chicken, some corn, some potatoes, and on some days, he switched out the corn for some green beans. I said, okay, if that's all you got, it's good. It works for me. I ain't complaining, all right? Man, it was some good baked chicken. So watch this. So she, as most of you all know, she's an actress, and so after being married, really for a short period of time, she went to New York and was shooting a show in New York, and she was in New York, I think, for, well over 6-7 months. So I was like, okay, cool. While she's gone, no problem. I'll take care of it myself. So she comes back, and, my expectation, unspoken, was, hey, baby, you've read the same scriptures that I've read. That means when you're home, you're supposed to get back into the kitchen, right? So I didn't say nothing. I just expected it. I assumed that was going to happen. So she comes back home, and I come home from work, and I'm looking in the kitchen. I don't smell nothing. I don't smell nothing in the oven. I don't see nothing on the stove. Okay. So I said, all right, well, you know what? She's tired tonight. No worries. So we ordered in, no problem. So I would come home the next day, and I would be, I don't smell nothing. I'd look in the microwave, ain't nothing in the microwave. I'd look in the refrigerator, maybe the chicken is marinating. Ain't no marinade chicken in the refrigerator, right? So day after day, when there was nothing prepared, I began to get angry because I had an unspoken expectation. And as a result of my unspoken expectation, I began to judge her in my mind and her actions. I'm hungry. We just got married. This is what's supposed to be happening. This is what I would say to myself, having a conversation in my head with her by myself. Come on, anybody ever been there before? Come on, y'all, don't leave me hanging right now. Right? So she would start to come home, and then she'd be like, hey, everything cool? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. 'Cause I'm thinking in my mind, if you don't know what's wrong, I ain't going to tell you, right? Because see, again, oh, I'm supposed to be the man. You know, listen, I've been working hard. You're supposed to come home. This is what you're supposed to do. Oh, and if you don't know that's what you're supposed to do, then, hey, I don't know what I'm going to say to you, right? So this began to happen. Day after day, this resentment started to build. And so finally, it got so intense that we finally had to have a conversation. She's like, what is going on? What's the problem? And I'm like, well, why aren't you cooking? You know that's what's supposed to happen? Whoa, Lord, why did I say that? Why did I say that, y'all? Again, I have evolved, but I'm just telling you my truth at that time. So here's what she said. She said, I could feel the weight of your expectation, and it took the joy out of it for me. Because when we got in the marriage, I was cooking for you out of love, but your expectation made it seem like it was out of obligation. I'm talking to somebody right now. I'm talking to somebody right now. I am talking to somebody right now. So in that moment, here's what dawned on me. Most women, and I don't mean to generalize, but I think this generalization actually is appropriate, which is most women, by the time they've gotten to marriage, have endured so many different types of abuse. Emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, personal abuse. I mean, so by the time they get to marriage, it's an opportunity to heal from that abuse. And part of the healing is to be accepted and loved unconditionally. When I was having an unspoken expectation that I put on Megan, I was telling her, I'll treat you right if you do what I want you to. I was putting a condition on the love. So instead of marriage being a place where she could heal from the abuse, the conditions were stunting the environment that could allow her to be loved the way that I was called to love her and the way she deserves to be loved. So in that moment, I immediately became convicted, and I said, babe, right. I said, right, I'm so sorry. I said, first of all, I'm sorry that I had these unspoken expectations I never talked to you about and got mad at you over something I never asked you if you could do or wanted to do. Isn't it crazy? We have these expectations of people that we don't even ask them, can we have the expectation, but we get mad at them when they don't meet it, but they didn't even know they was expected to begin with. You see how crazy we can be? Yes, and so as a man, I said, baby, I'm sorry. I said, here's the thing. I want you to know that I love you whether you cook or not. When we were at that altar and I said I do, I didn't say I do because I knew I was going to get in some baked chicken. Amen? I said I do because of you. And I said, I want you to know that I love you whether you cook or not. So I said, from this day forward, I don't want to ever have this conversation in our marriage again. Some days I'll cook, some days you'll cook, some days we'll order out, but no longer will there be an expectation about who does what in the kitchen. And do you know, our marriage has gone to another level. Do you know me as a man learning, oh, wow. Yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm not hungry. It doesn't mean that I don't want her cooking. Of course I do. But I want it out of love. And what about me modeling what I want? See, because sometimes as a man, we say, oh, man, just do it. No. What about you getting in the kitchen? What about me getting in the kitchen? Come on now. Brother, I ain't going to let you leave me hanging out. I'm going to go ahead and dap myself. Get in the kitchen. You want her to cook? You cook some stuff first. Come on now. Right? Because so often as men, we make demands instead of leading by example, leading by service. Here's what I have learned on this journey. I have learned that we as men are not hopeless. Society especially wants to get us as black men to believe that, you know, it ain't going to happen. And sometimes, there are some women that jump on that bandwagon. But I want you to know there is hope. And before we end, I'm going to show you how much hope there is in this room. Are there any questions before I do one last demonstration and we close out? Yes, my brother.
Okay, I got you right here. No, I don't get a mic up. Excuse me.
All right, I don't know how this works. So anyway, real good question. You brought back about the outsider. They sometimes, because men do go into that fold, especially when a woman is not listening and they need someone to speak to, but of that environment, meaning they need another female opinion. So they go ask for counsel outside of their relationship. You said in a marriage that's a forbidden, which is understandable because that's in a marriage that's bounded by law.
Sure.
But in a relationship, which is not a marriage,
Sure.
it's
Great.
a building of marriage, which is training zone.
Totally got your question.
How does that work?
Yep. So here's what I would say: if you're a single man in a relationship, right? So you're a single man in a committed relationship. There's some challenges going on, and you want to get a female point of view, right? I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think you have to be mindful of is how often are you seeking that female point of view? Because that particular person that you're seeking this point of view from could ultimately become a liability to your relationship, because you find yourself being more truthful with them more consistently than you are with the person you're with. So if you want to seek an opinion, let's hope that it's that, just to seek an opinion, but not to consistently seek counsel from somebody that you ultimately may have feelings for, and they can have feelings for you when you're in a relationship. That's all. You have to be mindful. Cool.
All right, we have another one over here. If you have a question, just hold your hand up. I'll come over to you.
Hi, my name is Erica. So I wanted to know, you talk about a lot of like preventative things to do in relationships, things you can do, and even while being in it. But what's some advice you would give for like conflict resolution? Like
Yep.
you try to do everything, followed your advice, but things still aren't working out, you're still fighting. How would you suggest getting through that in a healthy way?
Okay, great. So I want to talk about that inside marriage, outside marriage. So if you're having some communication problems and you're in a relationship and you're not married, one of the number one tips, and I would say this actually goes for both, to write down what it is you want to say. A lot of times, God bless, a lot of times when we are emotional and angry and we feel, convicted on a point, we let that emotion affect our tone. Here's the thing. You may have the best message in the world, but if your tone is wrong, we ain't going to hear you. So what I have found is sometimes write it down. Here's what I'm trying to say. Here's why. Here's what you do, and here's how it makes me feel. And there have been many times you give it to that person to read, and then you come together and you talk about it. If that doesn't work, go see a counselor. Megan and I, before we even got engaged, we went to 4 months of pre-engagement counseling to work through communication issues and so many other things. If that doesn't work, seek the help of your circle of friends. Hey, let's go meet with another couple. Let's sort this out. If that doesn't work, it may be a sign this person's not for you. Because communication, we all have different communication styles. That's not the issue. The issue is the person committed to working through their communication style in order to find harmony in the relationship. So those are some tips and tools that I would advise if you've been in a situation or are currently in a situation in a relationship with communication issues. If you're married and you're having communication issues, you've got to bring in a therapist or a counselor ASAP. So important. Also, there's a great book that is called His Needs, Her Needs. If you are married, I advise you to get this book. This book will completely change your marriage. It talks about that healthy, successful marriages basically are completely rooted on spouses meeting each other's needs. And the book walks you through the different needs and how to do it. And one of the key things in that book is that just because it's your need doesn't make it their need. And just because it's their need doesn't make it your need, right? So you learn in the book what her needs are, what your needs are, and then you commit yourself to becoming excellent at dealing with those needs. Communication is hard. What I would say to the fellas in the house, if you have some communication issues, do your best to not let your frustration and your temper work against what's in your heart. If you really love her and you care about her, don't allow that frustration of like not knowing how to say what you really want to say get you to a place where you do something that really isn't in your heart. If you aren't sure how to communicate, write it down, get some help from some friends, because it's so important. You don't want to lose that love. Let me tell you that. And if you're a woman in the house and you're having some communication challenges, one thing that's important, again, don't have the expectation that he's going to communicate the way you communicate. It's okay to own the way you communicate, but give him a chance to process that and come back to you in the way that he communicates. Instead of saying, hey, well, I said all this and then you didn't say that. That must mean this. No, it may mean that he's just trying to figure out how he feels about what you said and may need a moment to do that before he comes back to you. Right? Amen. Okay.
All right.
I don't know how we're doing on time, but we're good. Okay.
Okay. First off, I want to thank you. So I'm a big fan. I follow, I listen, I do a lot of things.
Thank
We
you.
don't get to see a lot of men doing what you're doing in the secular world, so I want to give you a big thank you for that.
Thank you.
But my question is, I actually bought my own copy of my book, and I would love to get it signed.
Yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes. No
Okay.
problem.
Thank you.
Matter of fact, you can bring it up here. I'll sign it before we get done.
ahead.
Get done. Awesome, because I've already signed the other. Yeah, you can just put it right here. You got a pen too? Man, my brother came prepared. Thank you, my brother. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, man. Right on. See, that's love. That's love. A lot of people told me that, that men wouldn't buy this book, and there have been men all around the world that have bought this book because they're men. As men, we do want help, and we just don't always know where to get it. Yes, this brother right here.
I'm getting over there. Okay. If you can
Getting
meet me on the side, it'll help me a lot.
And then,
I feel like Oprah.
once you get through with him, come on over to this side because there's some questions over here.
Hey, Devon, Derek Moody.
Hey,
fellow
what's
alum.
up, my brother?
What's going on, man? You said a lot, and I appreciate all that you've said.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pose a good question behind this, but maybe you can speak to the idea that there's a lot of ways to be a man.
Yes.
Sometimes we hear a real man does this or men do that, and some of that may be good advice, but there are a lot of ways to be a good man. And sometimes if you hear information like what was shared today, you become gung-ho to go out and be honest and share your truth and talk to men who aren't prepared to hear what you have to say, and they will contradict and give you a bad time about this newfound conviction that you have about being a better man. And that's not to say that you should not share and continue along that path, but maybe you can speak to the idea of kind of vipping in and vipping out, because everybody's not prepared to handle
Yep, you're right.
and receive you when you step out
That's
there
right.
to be this man that you've been called to be. And so you can take some hits.
Of course.
And that doesn't mean you shouldn't quit, but there's a way
No,
to
I
probably
got
get
you.
in and get out to make that happen.
I got you. So two things. One, when you just using a biblical reference, there's a story of Joseph. He had a dream that ultimately that he was going to be in charge of all his brothers, and it was great revelation for him. But he made, in the moment, which was kind of a foolish mistake, which he went and told his brothers what he saw, without any regard of how they were going to feel about it. And what happened? They sold him, right? You may get great revelation, but you got to use wisdom on who to share it with and when to share it. The second thing is that when you are going, and I are going on the right path, when we make the decision we are going to change, how do we know it was the right decision? Because of the conflict that we face once we make that decision. If you are going in the wrong direction in life, you're not going to be stopped. When was the last time you had conflict doing the wrong thing? Think about it. When was the last time you had a hard time doing the wrong thing? Or going in the wrong direction? Come on. But when you and I make the decision we're going to do the right thing, we're going to be the men we were called to be, you better believe the challenge is coming. Why? Because it's almost like the world wants to know, okay, are you serious? Can you handle the ridicule? Can you handle the conversation? Can you handle those that say, all right, bro, I ain't going to holler at you? Okay, cool. Can you handle that? So I would say, as you find the wisdom to share what it is you're being revealed to share, and if those around you cannot handle it, that's not a sign to go back to who you were. It's a sign to commit to who you want to be. And understand that conflict is a sign you've made the right commitment. Right on.
Hello, Brother Franklin. My name is James. I just want to ask you this question on a spiritual note, because I hear all these things according to the flesh, because I'm a person about spiritual principles. I did hear about relationships. The Bible says that when God has joined together, that no man asunder. According to these principles that God had put in the Bible, and we look at life as, okay, we have a realm that we're supposed to be the light of, of the gospel, showing the good works of Jesus. When I look at, certain patterns in life as, oh, hey, that was off, that's not God's way of leading an example, a principle of what he gave us in our life, we should be a people of, be an example of, his gloriness, his purification, his righteousness. And my question to you is ask, okay, we come in a situation when is the best way to put on, our principles of life, our meaningness for God, and be really truthful to him and to others?
Yes, great question. The Bible talks about, we have to worship him in spirit and truth. And I think that if we are spiritual beings, right, in, having this earthly experience, so we're spirit and flesh. Too often, I think one of the things that repels people who may not be spiritually where we are is the fact that we act like our spirit gives us automatically victory over the flesh. And we act like, oh, yeah, like you go into any church. And I'm not knocking this because, I think there's a time and place for it. Oh, God is good all the time. All the time. God is good. How are you doing? Oh, I'm great. I'm blessed and highly favored. Okay, that may be true, but you're depressed. You were just crying your eyes out in the car. It's like going to the emergency room and everybody's there and you ask somebody, well, why are you here? Oh, I'm good. Really? Well, why are you in the emergency room? I'm in the emergency room because I'm hurt. So with spirituality and to be able to reflect the light of Christ, it's part of reflecting it is to reflect it in truth. That we are not Christ, but we're aspiring to be like him and we're on a journey. And part of the journey is compassion and love and no judgment. No judgment. Too often as people of faith, we're the first people to judge. Nope. Our job is to love and to say, hey, life is hard. People are going to fall. But when I see you fall, just like Christ, I'm there to pick you up. I'm not going to say, why did you do it in the first place? Never once do you see that. The only people that Jesus took on were the religious people. Everyone else, he was like, I understand. I love you. Here's how you do this. According to your faith, be it unto you. So the best way that we can do it is to love, show compassion, and get judgment totally out of our spirit. And I believe when we do that, we'll let Christ's light shine through.
All right, we have one more question.
One more question.
Before we wrap it up, they can come and talk to you after. We have one more question here, sir.
Yes, my name is Trooper Fixico. I've been a member of the Buffalo Soldiers for 15 years. I had a 32, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I had a 32-year marriage.
Wow, give it up for 32 years. Give it up for 32 years.
32 years.
Come on.
We raised 2 sons. Most of my life, I didn't know who I was. In the last 10 years, I discovered who I was, and it was a big history. And I was the only one who could save the family of my history of my family. But so it was like my wife and I stopped growing because the mission that I had to go on was bigger. It was bigger than our marriage. And what can you tell me? I eventually took it to the Smithsonian Institution this year. I went to the United Nations. It was huge.
Amen.
And
so I want to make sure I understand your question so I can
my
answer.
question is, what happens when you stop growing together because,
Okay. Got it. So it's like you have a calling, a purpose, and you find yourself in a marriage where you're not growing together, you're growing separately. Yeah. This is a very common challenge in marriages, because here's one of the crazy things about marriages. One of the crazy expectations is that the person that we married is not the same person the next day, the next week, the next month. You aren't the same person the next day, the next week, the next month. But we keep expecting somebody to be who they were instead of appreciating the growth of where they are now. So in a marriage, sometimes, especially, we can go out there and conquer the world. What I practice, and again, I'm not the guru on this. I'm working on this. I'm only married 7 years. You've been married 32, which is amazing. Megan and I both have very strong, independent, yet collective lives. And so a lot of times what we'll do is, before I accept an event or an opportunity, I go and confer with her. Hey, babe, are you cool if I do this? And sometimes I've made a mistake and I've booked stuff, and she's like, you didn't check with me. I'm like, you're right. Would you please let me do it anyway? You know, and sometimes she'll be okay with it, but I try not to, you know, abuse that grace too much. But we try to confer, but here's the other thing we do. We try to give each other freedom to be who God has called us to be. And what I've noticed is that by letting her do what she needs to do and her letting me need to do what I need to do, but we still are in communication about it, it helps us grow independently yet collectively. What I would say is if you feel like in your marriage, you know, you've kind of gotten to a place where you're here and she may be there, the beauty is that you all are still married, right?
No, my wife has passed on to heaven 10 years ago.
Oh, she
so I'm
passed
talking
10 years
about,
ago. I see. Okay, so here's
you
what
know,
I was...
the last part of
I get it.
wasn't as...
Got it. Okay, great. So here's the beauty. The beauty is that if your wife passed away 10 years ago and you all were married for 32 years, here is the number one thing that I would ask you to do right now is to not allow any guilt of what you feel like you wish you would have done to impact and hinder your life right now. For 32 years, you did what many men wouldn't have done for 32 years. And I argue that your wife loves you, and you're probably harder on yourself than she would be if she was here now. Forgive yourself. Know that you did the best you could when you could. And know that that's enough, my brother. Okay, last thing that I want to read here. Amen, you're welcome. Last thing I want to read here. This is, remember I told you I was going to show you that there is hope. Well, I want to visualize hope. So I wrote in The Truth About Men this pledge called the Master's Pledge. So here's what I'm going to do, and this is geared towards all the men in the house. I am going to read different lines from this pledge. As you commit to take the pledge, I'm asking that you stand. As you commit to taking this pledge, I'm asking that you stand. So here we go. The Master's Pledge. I pledge not to blame women for my actions. Women are never at fault when I lose control. Nothing a woman wears, says, drinks, or does is an excuse for improper touching, remarks, or sexual behavior ever. I pledge to never harass a woman, period. I pledge to stop looking the other way. If I witness a friend or colleague harassing a woman, I will say something. I pledge to stop making excuses for times when I behave badly. It's not the culture, peer pressure, porn, alcohol, or anything else. It's me. I pledge to confess my sins, apologize to whom I have offended, and live every day to make it right. I pledge to take a woman's no for an answer. No means no, period. It doesn't mean maybe. It doesn't mean try harder. I pledge to quit acting like my manhood is an entitlement for sex. It's not. I pledge to get the help I need if I struggle with anger or violence. I have to break the cycle of physical, psychological, and emotional abuse among men. I pledge to change my routine. If there's any part of my routine that makes me vulnerable to being less than I know I can be, I must change it. And here's the last part of the pledge. I pledge to take accountability for who I am and what I do. What I will be, I am now becoming. If you as a man have stood, you are committing to taking this pledge. Now, for all the women in the house and all the people that have given up on men, what you see standing is hope. We do want to be better. We will become better. And we are committed to doing everything in our power to be the men we were called to be. If you are standing right now, I know at times it seems hopeless. I know at times it seems beyond frustrating. But I want you to hang in there. There is help. You are not by yourself. Look to your left, look to your right. Look at how many men are standing around this place. You are not alone. You will win if you do not quit. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Thank you for keeping me sharp today. And I hope I sharpened you up as well. Thank you.
Y'all give it up for Devon Franklin, everybody. Come on. Devon Franklin. Come on, y'all can do better than that. Devon Franklin. Devon Franklin. Where is Shanice? Who has the books? Who has the tickets? Oh, right here. So who has a ticket? Who got a ticket? Raise your hand. That means you get a copy of the book, an autographed copy of the book. Who has a ticket?